All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome into the Rocky Top Insider postgame show. This is Ryan Shumpert. I'm Rick Butler. I'll tell you what, I don't have stats like normal. I don't have a lot of numbers like normal. But what I can tell you is that Tennessee clinched a spot in the playoffs here today with a 36-23 win over Vanderbilt. It was a little bit shaky at first.
No kidding.
You said it correctly. I mean, this whole side of the stadium was covered in orange for this game. They weren't that loud the first couple minutes in the game. They were shell-shocked. But after that, Tennessee really got things rolling behind the arm of Nico Iamaleava, took the victory, took care of business.
Yeah, we got another football game going.
That's
on
right.
us, but they did it. And I mean, honestly, it's crazy to say because 36-23 was the final, not super lopsided. Obviously, Tennessee was down 14-0. They didn't take their first lead of the entire game until, 25 seconds left in the first half. But
right.
You look at the final numbers, it was kind of a dominant performance by Tennessee. I think Tennessee, you said we don't have stats, so you might want to double check me on this, but I think it was something like 538, maybe even 6. I know Vanderbilt had 212 yards of offense, which is obviously very little.
Yeah.
And Tennessee was in the 500s, maybe even into the 600s. So once they got into the flow of the game, it felt like Tennessee really took control. Vanderbilt took advantage of some short fields and got a touchdown, got a field goal, obviously, the kick return to open the game. But once Tennessee settled in and got a little bit past that disastrous start, they played a really good game and really took control of this one and honestly coasted for much of the second half.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, there was one point where I looked up. Tennessee was on a 24-3 run, and then a 30-3 run, and then a 33-3 run. Just kind of
36-3, I guess.
36.
It ended at.
Yeah, I guess it would have. I don't have those numbers perfectly, but it was a lopsided run that Tennessee was going on after Vanderbilt struck with those first 2 touchdowns of the game. And again, I talked about it a second ago, but I think you put a lot of that credit onto the shoulders, onto the arm, really, if you will, of Nico Iamaleava. He was great today for Tennessee. I believe he ends with 4 passing touchdowns, but it wasn't just the numbers for him. It was the way that I thought he commanded the offense. It was the way that they were able to hit a couple deep plays in the game. He was able to get the ball into the end zone. He looked like he really kind of had a little bit of swagger to his game here as Tennessee got the win.
Yeah, he underthrew that deep ball for what was largely a
right.
bad pick. And besides that, I mean, he was really good. And you're right, he played with, it felt like a lot of confidence. It felt like a lot of swagger. Hit some tough throws, relatively or in the intermediate. Tennessee receivers took them for long touchdowns. And, Tennessee had the chunk plays in the passing game today. They've been missing. And undermanned today, Brew McCoy couldn't go.
Right.
Hamstring injury, and he kind of flared up.
And then they lost receivers during the game.
In warm-ups, Dante Thornton stepped up, had 2 touchdowns, I think like 28 and 86 yards. And then his third catch was a short one. He gets injured. He's out. So it's a lot of Mike Matthews who had a touchdown, a lot of Chris Brazzell, some Chaz Nimrod. Squirrel White was a little in and out of the game with injuries as well. But Tennessee just consistently made plays, and you're right, I think more than just the numbers. Like on the 2-minute drive to end the first half, he hit 2 big third down conversions, one to Kitzelman, one to Brazzell, a couple nice runs to move the sticks on the first drive of the second half when Tennessee pushed its lead to 2 touchdowns. So he was just really solid. It helps a lot. Vanderbilt's pass rush we talked about on the podcast this week has been pretty bad. They rarely pressured him all game.
Yeah.
It certainly is a lot easier when you have time to throw, and credit Tennessee's offensive line for giving it to him.
Tennessee's offense did a great job of double dipping there in the middle of the game with the halftime break as well. I know that's something you wrote about in your 4 takeaways from this game, which you can go and find over at RockyTopInsider.com. Trying just to kind of think through my checklist in my head. I don't have it written down. By the way, you mentioned Squirrel White a second ago. Good friend of the program, Ryan Sylvia. He actually posted a picture onto social media of Squirrel White in a sling after the game. So go ahead and find that.
Like we're back at Arkansas again.
Yeah, I believe it's at Ryan T. Sylvia or something like that. But also want to talk about the defense real quick. Vanderbilt is a team that has given plenty of good teams troubles. They gave Texas troubles. They gave Alabama troubles, obviously. But Tennessee was really able to kind of batten down the hatches again after that first true drive from the Vanderbilt offense where they had really nice field position to start the game because of the Dylan Samson fumble. After that, Tennessee's defense really had things contested. They did not let Diego Pavia have a great game. I believe he finishes just under 50% throwing, but I believe it was also down to about 30% at one point in the game. So he kind of got that number back up as well. But what do you think of the way that Tennessee's defense was just able to kind of contain, that's the word I'm looking for, contain a bit of a chaotic, a bit of a sporadic Vanderbilt offense?
Yeah, I think overall they did a good job. I mean, you saw Vanderbilt was able to run the ball decently, but never any chunk plays, which forced them to really sustain a lot of stuff. They didn't have a short field. And early in the game, thing I wrote about, I think we talked about, like Vanderbilt, very much a ball control team. third downs in red zone. I thought were going to be big. Well, early in the game, Vanderbilt, I think, converted the first 3 or 4 third downs.
Yeah, they did.
They scored a touchdown in the red zone, but in the next, I think Tennessee's first third down stop of the game was the 3rd and 1 down in the red zone, and Vanderbilt kicked the field goal. And it felt like from there, or maybe you'd point to the next drive when Jermon McCoy had the interception behind us, which was just a crazy play, acrobatic play. Tennessee's defense was pretty stout. They did, again, not that Vanderbilt didn't get anything in the run game, but they didn't give up chunk plays in the run game, and Vanderbilt just couldn't pass the ball at all. Pavia had some nice scrambles or where he eluded pressure, but Tennessee had pressure on him throughout the game. He was sacked 3 times, and just not a whole lot of open receivers down the field. And Tennessee's pass defense, again, just was really effective and did a good job of limiting what Pavia could do.
2 more quick things. Both special teams. Vanderbilt's kick return game had a nice game. I'm sure that's something that if this wasn't the regular season finale, that'd be something that really kind of go back and be highlighted by that team. But then Max Gilbert comes in and hits a big 50-yard field goal for Tennessee. I know he also hit a shorter one right around here. He obviously hit his extra points, but that 50-yarder was big.
It was, yeah. Again, early-ish in the game. When,
for a guy who's had some troubles here late in the season.
I think it was 17-7 at that point. I mean, 17-10. 50 yards. I think he's now made at least 2 from 50 because I know he made one at Georgia from 50, maybe 3 straight from 50-plus yards. So he's kind of gotten in a little bit of a roll after a midseason funk. And, yeah, it wasn't good from 1 more yard. And, Tennessee had one where they could have tried a 52-yarder later in the game. And I think that, they saw it as the same end zone. It was good from 50. It hit the upright and fell forward. It wasn't going to go in from any further. So he was good. And then other on special teams, positive. Jackson Ross. One of the big plays of the game. God. Right at that sequence, actually. Tennessee takes the delay game, punts. That ball lands at the 1-yard line. Tennessee was not there to catch it. Backspin to the 4-yard line. Tennessee ends up getting a safety 2 plays later. So that was big. One other, I guess, on the reverse side, negative besides the punt return, or besides the kickoff return for touchdown on special teams. Drew Carter did not catch punch today. A couple of them were bad, too. And Tennessee lost 20, 25 yards field position. That actually led to the 96-yard touchdown drive. Did in the first half, so it all worked out, but probably should have been an 80-yard touchdown or a 75-yard touchdown drive if you would have just run up and caught it.
It's been a bit of a chaotic weekend, if you will, in college football. In Tennessee had the noon game here in the at least Eastern time for the noon game, but there's crazy things happening in the Big Ten. Obviously, Georgia had a bit of a scare against Georgia Tech last night, but the main thing that comes out of today is that Tennessee is going to clinch their spot in the playoffs. We'll see how much they can maybe rise up the leaderboard. I know you typically know that better than me, but this is a huge day, not just for the Tennessee football teams, but just for Tennessee athletics in general. Now, there is an obvious idea, though, that when one season ends, another begins. And that's sort of how Josh Heupel is thinking about this postseason as he goes forward. You can hear all of his quotes over on the Rocky Top Insider YouTube account. But, man, this is a big moment for Tennessee. Now, they're going to have to regroup. They're going to have to come back to the drawing board and figure out what they need to do next. But, again, all but the announcement, Tennessee has probably clinched a spot in the college football playoffs.
For sure. I think the big interesting thing, at least as of right now, is how the committee will handle the Ohio State loss. Ohio State now 10-2 like Tennessee. Will Tennessee jump them? If they jump them, that'll be good enough to get in the playoff. And if I'm not mistaken, Ohio State is now out of the Big Ten championship game, so there's nothing the Buckeyes could do next week to and then jump Tennessee. So that'll be the big thing to watch on Tuesday. I know USC Notre Dame are playing right now. I've not seen a score there. And then obviously the big one, Texas A&M tonight.
I don't want to put you on the spot. There's obviously so many things that could happen. Could Tennessee potentially be hosting a playoff game? I saw some chatter about that on social media.
They just need to jump somebody. They jump Ohio State. They jump Texas. They jump Notre Dame. Any of those would get Tennessee hosting the playoff. So
Tennessee fans cheering for the Aggies, fighting Texas Ags maybe tonight?
Yeah, but I mean, there's kind of a scenario there. That one's a little trickier.
Okay.
Because then if Texas A&M were to beat Georgia next week,
then they might.
Then they would jump Tennessee, and then the question is, would Georgia fall behind Tennessee with their third loss in the conference championship?
I see.
And Tennessee with Texas and Ohio State things kind of similar. Would 10-2 Tennessee jump 10-2 Texas? I think it's a little more obvious because Tennessee would have a better resume, whereas to me right now, Tennessee and Ohio State's resumes are pretty similar. So we'll see what that looks like. But, yeah, go for A&M. The one that's just defining is if Notre Dame if USC beats Notre Dame, Tennessee 100% will host. And one last thing, not related to this. Yeah, were you going to ask me one more thing?
No, I was gonna wrap it up. I'm
Dylan
cold.
Samson, Tennessee.
Real cold.
Tennessee new single-season rushing leader. He runs for, I think, 170-something tonight. Had another early fumble, bounced back from that. He passes Travis Stevens for the, I think upper 1400s, like 1475, something like that. So a good season for him. Regular season's capped off with another big performance, though it's first game of the season without a touchdown. So he still needs 2 more touchdowns to tie Gene McEver as Tennessee's career record holder. But he keeps on notching off more records in Tennessee's record book.
All right. Well, like I mentioned a couple times, it's a bit chilly out here, so we're going to head inside. We're going to go ahead and record our final regular season RTI Press Pass podcast. Thank you so much for whoever and how, all the people who have been following that throughout the season. We're excited to bring you the regular season finale here in just a couple minutes from right here in First Bank Stadium. Again, number 8 Tennessee defeats Vanderbilt by a score of 36-23 and clinches a spot in the college football playoffs. There is more football to be played. That won't just be an Outback Bowl or a Cheez-It Bowl. Meaningful football for Tennessee, maybe even right there in Neyland Stadium in Knoxville. We'll have to see. Stay tuned to RockyTopInsider.com for all the latest Tennessee news, notes, and coverage. It's Ryan Shumpert. I'm Rick Butler. You've been listening to the Rocky Top Insider post-game show.
It's a good save.
I couldn't remember.
I thought you were about to go Press Pass podcast.